Thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste and I'm a therapist from Boston. I have a special guest. I'm going to have her introduce herself to you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yeradmi. I also go by Jera. And yeah, I'm a somatic practitioner here in the city as well.
Right.
I'm in the business of healing all around. I
Mhm.
am also a doula, full spectrum doula, and I've been practicing the healing arts for over 10 years now. So I'm really excited to
Nice.
be here. Thank you, Celeste.
You're well. I'm excited to have you. I'm always talking to people about somatic work. And so we're going to get into that because this might be the first time somebody's hearing this word,
hmm
somatic or soma.
hmm
And it's a area that I don't feel like our medical system in America really focuses on. And
hmm
I think that that's a huge missing piece in people's lives where there's so much entrapment taking place. And
hmm
there are real remedies that people can do to help release it, which is not conventional here.
hmm
So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You said you was born and raised in Boston, right?
I was born in Boston, raised in the South Shore and in the
Okay.
Caribbean. So I was always back and forth.
Caribbean
Uh,
where?
Dominican Republic.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So my a little bit about my background. There's so much um to think about, but yeah. So I was born in Boston. I come from a Dominican family, and my parents are immigrants, and my mother was a true hustler in all the sense of the word.
Yeah.
And she built an empire and came here without even knowing the language. So
Dang.
she was really out here doing the thing. And you can imagine. So I come from a mixed family. So my mother remarried, and I am one of what eventually was 6 children.
Wow.
And so big household. I grew up with my stepfather, who is my father,
Okay.
and yeah, there was a lot in my childhood that was very confusing for me.
Yeah.
That um, despite having so much love in my home and having all my quote unquote needs met,
Mhm.
I also was just going through so much. And my parents divorced when I was about 2 years old. And it led me on a trajectory of a lot of suffering, all of it, like all of
Yeah.
my of
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
upbringing, and a lot of confusion and being really disconnected from my body.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's sort of
Let
where
me
things started getting really interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that part.
hmm
I was sharing with you earlier. I'm reading a book called Decolonizing Therapy,
hmm
and it talks about immigration and the stories and how you said your mom was a true hustler. A
hmm
lot of your work has to do with slowing down.
Yes.
Not only did you watch your mom hustle, but like,
Yeah.
and I think that's important for people listening because it's not like our parents or caregivers said like, hey, Celeste, I want you to like work and not take care of yourself, not feel
hmm
what's happening. Your mom didn't have any choice.
hmm
She was in survival mode. She had to try to make a living and do these things, right?
hmm
She didn't know how to slow down. She didn't have the capacity to do so. And it sounds like it was kind of learned behavior on your end. Would you say that that's pretty accurate with the way you were moving?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was mirrored, yeah, for me my entire life. And if you're not busy and hustling and working really hard,
Are
then what
you
are you
working?
doing? And what is your
Exactly.
worth? Right. It's really, yeah, it questions your worth and your capabilities,
Yeah.
and am I enough? And so yeah, it was
Mhm.
a and those are all great qualities to learn, right? In many
Yes.
ways.
Yeah.
And there's also a whole other dimension that um being in those circumstances, you're not really able to tap into. And our generations before us didn't have the
You
ability
know,
or capacity to be able to talk about these things. So here we are rewriting the script, right?
yeah, we're rewriting the
Yeah.
script and we are
Mhm.
I think it's important to understand our lineage and like where things come from. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people tend to feel defective as
Mm.
and I know I always share, I've been doing this since 2018 and I share about how I struggle with depression and like I had my needs met. And there was this other disconnect where I wasn't a part of my body. One
Mm,
lady on my podcast said, we've been divorced from our bodies. It's time to come back. And people
mm,
don't realize how much anxiety that brings when you're always ahead and you're not in the moment. And I
mm,
say anxiety needs you to be thinking about the future or worried about the past, because when you're in the moment, it's really hard to stay in that state. When you look at your life and you talk about like holding on to things, do you feel like you had so much things trapped in your body that you just not, it was nobody's fault? Like you had a lot of
mhm,
transition moving from
mhm,
different places, a lot of things
mhm,
you didn't understand. Do you
mhm.
feel like you just kind of carried it in your body?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and not understanding the importance of being with emotion and
Yes.
feeling it
Yeah.
and letting it run its course.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's where does it go? It's all in the body. And
Yes.
then the learning how to self-soothe in all the different ways,
Yeah.
that was a big part of my experience for sure.
Nice.
Mhm.
And I'm going to talk about the body experience and how I was
Mhm.
able to start getting used to it, and then I want to talk about your kind of aha moment in Thailand.
Mhm. Yeah.
But for me, I went to therapy, but then I remember I started doing yoga, and
Mm.
I was like at a place where I was like, I'm just trying anything. It wasn't like,
Right.
because unfortunately, I'm being honest. Like I grew up in the hood, and like the things I was trying, I called them white people's things.
Mhm.
Not like
I
nature.
hear
I
you.
love nature. I love hiking. Like I love all these things that I I
Are
used to
really
think
good for
were
us.
weird.
Yeah. That are
And I
actually
like
really
feel sad. I'm laughing,
healing.
but I feel so sad that like we thought this
Mhm.
way, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But yoga, I remember I'm like, let me try yoga. And I remember like starting to wash my hands and actually feel my hands. And like when
Mm.
I'm
Mm,
driving,
that's
like
beautiful.
it helped me on a trajectory of slowing down and feeling things. And then I started to recognize when I'm overwhelmed, it feels like I got something heavy on my back, right? I tell people that
Mm.
when your body may give you signs before it hits you mentally.
Absolutely.
And so like that was something I remember growing up. I had struggles, I had a lot of back pain, but that's
Mm.
because that's where I carried a lot of my stress,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So I know that with you being a somatic therapist, after we hear about your aha moment, I do want you to transition and us talk about these like little ways that we can
Mhm.
think about like how we are showing up or how our body's trying to give us signs, because for a lot of my clients this is so new. Like it's rare to have a traditional CBT therapist like bringing in the
The somatics.
somatic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, like it needs to be more normalized.
Mhm.
But a lot of people don't know. But you went to Thailand, which is
Yeah.
outside of America.
Absolutely, it definitely is. It's on the other side of the
Some people
globe.
say, some people be like, oh, as soon as I stepped into another country, like I felt the weight lifted
You
off.
already know, girl. You already know. Yeah, traveling is essential for healing, absolutely.
So
I
sad.
after going, because I went while I was in, college, I went to UMass Amherst. Shout out to my Zoomass people, family, really. So I went there my junior year of college, and I was studying, hospitality and tourism management and business at the School of Business of at UMass, and I ended up going to Thailand for a semester, and it was a before and after in my life. I mean, talk about it was the very first time, and like really I'm taking a moment to really go back there because I remember feeling like this is a completely different planet. This is a completely different world than what I've ever been exposed to, than what I've ever been taught,
I
than what I've ever been like surrounded by. It was just like my mind was like on another level. I felt so good. People there, they call it the land of smiles because everyone is just beaming. All of my pictures, I always have the peace sign up because all the kids in Thailand, I taught at a school for a bit while I was there, and they are obsessed with the peace sign, and all they do is like hold it up in like different places, and people, there's
wow.
just a light, a very big light to people there, and the culture is just so beautiful. It's very beautiful. Yeah, they have a deep reverence for spirituality, for their elders, for the land. It's just it's just an incredible
So
place.
even though you were there for a semester, it sounds like you just kind of embraced the culture there. You
Oh,
didn't
absolutely. I lived with
resist
a family while I was there for a moment, for a short period of time.
it.
I
Yeah.
taught in, a different part of the island for a bit. We had the opportunity to go and teach English at a school at a I think it was like an elementary school, or was it high school? The kids there are like they're just smaller structure people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything when I was there, they'd be like, I'd be at the market, like, do they, walking through and like looking at different size, and they'd be like, you need big size? And I'd be like, yes, my friend, I am not
Oh,
from
you're
here. And you
considered
probably,
bigger
oh
even though
yeah,
you're small.
taller,
Oh,
just my
okay.
stature, everything
Yeah.
is people there are just smaller in size in general. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was like maybe it was like middle school or high school, maybe like freshman kids. I don't remember actually. I
Yeah.
have pictures of them, but yeah. Anyway, so I got to teach English and for a bit, for like a couple, I don't know how long it was, maybe a couple weeks or a month or something. And I got to live with a family. So we would have meals. The father was is a doctor, a dentist, I believe, or something. And we would go out to eat together. We would have all our meals together, and we were all together. And it was beautiful. I was in it fully and completely. And I traveled all over the country while I was there. So yeah.
And it was only for a semester, which is like 3 months.
It was about 4.5 months.
How
Yeah.
how were you able to take what you learned there to bring it back here?
I mean, well, the greatest change happened within myself and
That's true. Tell
being
people what you mean by that really quick. Sorry.
yeah,
That's
no,
big.
I was going there. Um, the greatest change happened within myself because it was the first time that I got to see and feel what it was like to be immersed in a different culture, and the reverence, like I said earlier, that people have for their elders and spirituality, and just the way that they live and treating people with kindness and smiling, and not in a way that's like
Fake.
fake.
Yeah.
It's you can feel the
Genuine.
connection. It's
Wow.
very genuine. And all the lessons, I mean, I had amazing teachers, friends that we met there that really just taught us about the culture. I met so many young children that were just so beautiful and just so special. And that really imprinted something really deep within me, that we create our own reality, and that life is really like a reflection, a mirror of our internal space. And I grew up hearing often that, reality is one thing, and that life is just one, very, very, just one way.
Mhm.
And this was like, oh, there's so many ways. There's so many
Yeah.
ways. And I can choose differently. I can choose how I show up and how I feel.
Mhm.
And it was a huge moment for me. Yeah. And it has evolved in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Obviously I would see that the change that I went through all up until now, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. It changed my life completely.
Yeah, and when she talks about the inner change, and it's about shifting the way you think,
Hmm.
for people that are listening, because sometimes the circumstances, like let's just say you're living in a environment where there's a lot of noise, a lot of roommates, like
Hmm.
you can't change the circumstances, but thinking
Hmm.
about what you can change. So it's an inner thing, but the way that we're taught here, if you grew up in America, is like you need something else, like you need something bigger, you need something
Hmm.
shinier,
Hmm.
and so we start thinking our lack of like product, or which don't get
Hmm.
me wrong, like it is helpful to have essential needs, but we think that we can't do anything without it and not start the process. So
Hmm.
when that inner work happens, it's huge,
Hmm.
and I think that's what was able to carry you, and obviously intention too. I'm sure you came back very intentional.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just all, obviously, when you go through big changes,
It wasn't
a big
linear.
part of me had to shed, and it was really, really, really difficult.
Yeah, grieving,
Hmm.
right? So, I'm glad you shared that, because I don't want it to be like, oh, she went to Thailand, came back, and life was
My
good.
life, hey, and
Yeah,
here
thank
I
you for
am, like,
saying that,
what's
because that
up?
is not how it works. And people are gonna be like, I went
Uh-uh.
to Thailand and came back. What
Yeah,
y'all
and I'm a new
gonna
woman.
be writing us like, wait, where
So
did this
all I
thing?
gotta do is go to Thailand real quick. No.
So the shedding, tell people what you mean when you say you had to do a lot of shedding.
Yeah. So growing and changing, especially early 20s, teenage years, early 20s. I mean, where I always say that people in their 20s are like fetuses. And obviously I'm I tend to be, it's just I'm I'm joking in that way because when I was 20, I thought that I knew everything or that I had things figured out. And 20s are a very big time, like a very special time to get to know ourselves.
Yeah.
And I wish, and my work now is really being the person I wish I had during that time, during my teenage years, during my
Yeah.
20s, because I and obviously we already know that life is about going through this process, right? There's no way out but through. And so obviously this is part of my life work. And I remember hearing um early on in this journey of mine that um we can decide to make our message, and that's really what I took on. And I was like, really, I am
I
about
love
that,
that.
yeah, because otherwise what is the point, right? Like
Yes.
I see things as very interconnected. I don't think that we are
Yes.
here by coincidence,
Yes.
and I always say that coincidences aren't a thing in my life. It's all synchronistic.
Yeah.
Even the really difficult moments that feel like
Yeah.
it is ripping us apart and that we're not going to make it another day. And
Yeah.
the only reason I'm able to support people now and to hold space the way I do now is because I've met the darkness and I've been with it. I've had to move through it. When you're in it, the only way is through. And so that it set me on a path of letting go of everything that was not me. And
Mhm.
that's big, right? Because
Yeah.
we are taught to be a certain way, right? I come from
Yeah.
a huge family, a beautiful culture, but there's trauma exists as a human being. It's just part of our life. It's part of the process. And
Yeah.
what we do with that and how we move through it is everything.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have
Mhm.
chills. Like that was so
Mm.
beautiful. I gotta make a clip of this one. In the darkness, and I want you to listen to what she's
Mhm.
saying because from our audience, because
Mhm.
it's not that we're saying like, oh, like pretend like everything's fine. Like
Mm-mm.
we feel,
Total
when I have
opposite.
yeah, when I have clients that have like used substances to self-medicate, and then when they get to a hard time and they're like so happy, like, you know what, I felt it. Like it was hard, but I'm glad I'm going through it.
Mhm.
And I still have moments of that are hard, but what gets me through is hope, knowing that like something different is going to happen. Change, like
Mhm.
after the rain there's a rainbow.
Mhm.
Those moments of internal dialogue really like can help us get through those moments, or else we'll feel stuck. And
Mhm.
a lot of times, and for people listening, when I say stuck, when I meet with people and I go through their story and they're struggling with something in the present, and I hear their past, and I'll say, oh, that makes sense, blah, blah, blah. And they'll be like, but that was 20 years ago. And I was like, the
Mm.
body keeps the score, right? It holds on, even if like our conscious wasn't holding on to it because it was so painful that it pushed it back, our body
Mhm.
holds on to it.
Mhm.
And so when you are faced with like, okay, let me start feeling, and don't get me wrong, feeling can feel really hard. But because we're human and we're going to have these experiences, it's important to embrace it, and look at it as part of the process, which is challenging. And I appreciate you for clarifying that for people that may
Mhm.
not realize that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's an important note to say that the body keeps the score until we feel it. And
Yeah, keep going.
until
Sorry.
we feel it. No sorries, it's all good. Yeah, until we feel it and actually give it some space to show us what it's meant to show us. And
Yes.
um I think in this moment in time, there is a quick fix for everything, or it seems, quote unquote, right?
It's
Because
yeah.
that's not true. But because we're in a technological time and everything, we want things in short bits and
Yeah.
really quick and really addicted to dopamine hits and just like, I want this fast and I want to look a certain way and be a certain way. And
Yeah.
this process and being with our emotions is a it is one of our greatest teachers.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's what it's in a, I grew up where if you weren't bleeding, nothing was wrong with you, which is a lot of
Mm.
the reasons why I suffer. I grew up in a
Whew.
religious background, church, and
Mhm.
my kids, like, we have emotion charts around the house. I have one on my
Mm.
computer. Like,
I love
it's
that.
just we talk about emotions all the time, and it's so normalized. When
Mhm.
my daughter's talking to people, she's 10 or she's 11, and they're shocked. She's like, "Oh, did that make how did that make you feel?" Like, she
Oh,
genuinely asks the question.
so beautiful.
And I think about how crucial, like, if we were to have this starting in schools and
Oh my
younger,
gosh.
because it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how much money you
Mm-mm.
have, if you
Mm-mm.
don't understand what's happening to yourself in real time, like, you feel like you're suffering. Like, every time I have so much gratitude about where I am, because I didn't think this was possible to, like,
Mm.
go through the experiences I went through and have peace. I thought it was because my mind was looping the trauma because I didn't give it another narrative. And
Mm.
so the more you give it a new narrative, it can have a new way of thinking, and people
Mhm.
don't realize it's possible. You understand what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah, of course, and to that point, there is also a part of my just my experience in learning about this work and really allowing the body to really show
Yeah.
how it feels and what does it mean to feel triggered in certain
Yeah.
circumstances or around certain people, and what is the response that I am receiving or feeling. Um, there is something very special about learning how your body responds in these circumstances, because you start to build a really beautiful relationship with your
Yeah.
body, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I got you, like,
Yeah.
we are okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, it is okay. I am not a young
Yes.
girl anymore. I am a
Yes.
grown ass woman,
Yes.
and we get to decide whether we say yes in this moment, whether we say no, whether we stay, whether we go, whether
Yes.
we like it, whether we don't. So
Yeah.
there is so much information there, and we start to build this really beautiful relationship that is so necessary and that so many people, especially in this country, are very disconnected from. And
Yeah.
I think this is all around the world, really. It's not just in this country, but all around the world. I mean, people everywhere, we're very disconnected.
Yeah.
And my whole thing with my with go ahead.
No, finish your whole thing.
Yeah. My whole thing when I created my business and my practice, it's my whole like motto is healing through connection.
Mhm.
In relationship, oh, excuse me, in relationship, so with other people, because we can't heal
Yes.
in
We
isolation.
cannot.
It's healing the connection between ourselves,
Yeah.
and once we look at that and start to build that relationship, everything else starts to, not that everything is going to nothing is going to be perfect ever.
Yeah.
However, having information, having that knowledge and that relationship is powerful. It's one of, again, one of our greatest teachers and
Yeah.
guides in this life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
Mhm.
100% right. You said it so beautifully again.
Thank you.
And I do believe that community is important, and with yourself. And I always tell people, um, they could be struggling in an intimate relationship or a friendship or whatever. And I say, the more you understand yourself and your needs, you won't allow people to, it'll be hard to do that. It's impossible because you're giving yourself what you need. So you're not going to accept nothing
Mhm.
less, because we don't give ourselves what we
Mm.
need, and
Mm.
we accept whatever, and then we find ourselves struggling. And
Mhm.
so understanding you is the best thing, because then you start to see your power. What you just described is being
Yes.
able to use discernment. Because prior to me being able to use discernment, it felt like everything was happening to me and I had no
Mhm.
power. And the importance of having power is, like, now I can make different decisions, because you
Mhm.
really can feel paralyzed in those moments. You could be a whole adult and a lot of time I could tell, because I've been working with people for so long, and
Yeah.
the suggestions I give, I'll be like, oh, and they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Believe me, I'm not the smartest person in the world, so it's nothing like crazy. It's like very simple, but because people aren't used to prioritizing themselves, it just
Mm.
feels far fetched. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Well,
That's so dope.
and just to mirror that back to you, your work is your medicine, and so,
Yes.
obviously what you are offering is going to be, that's the whole point, right? You're showing people their blind spots.
Yes.
And that we need a mirror like that. And one
Yeah.
thing I will say about relationships and everyone we encounter in our life is that we're all each other's mirrors. So
Yes.
there's not because you have a certain degree or I have this or
Yes.
whatever. We're all walking each other through this process. It's
Yes.
hard being a human being.
It
And
is.
one thing you said is that everything felt at a certain point like it was happening to you. And we've heard this over and over again and a million different, well, I have, and different podcasts. And one of my favorite teachers in the movement area space, she always will say that this is for us. We are going through this and we are taking everything that we are experiencing as an opportunity to grow. And
Yeah.
when we look at it that way, it's like, what is this showing me? What is this person right now that is triggering the F out of me? What are
Yes.
they showing me about myself? Right. And
Yes.
it's not because if we don't take it that, like, if we're not going through that, the conscious route, then we're going to learn the hard way. And some of us obviously will never learn, right? Like this,
Yeah.
we choose whether or not we want to live this life consciously. And again, we're
Right.
sovereign and we get to decide how we want to move while
Yeah.
we're here. And with that being said, it's a choice to look at things as happening to me, or excuse me, happening for me instead of to me.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say about this process of healing and building a relationship with ourselves is that um, remembering that we can do hard things and that um, we're meant to build capacity for a lot of joy.
Hmm.
And this process of adulting is a big part of it is learning how to be with the joy and how to really embody it, right? Because if we have a relationship with it, with joy, with actual joy and what that means, then we get to savor it and knowing that it's not always going to be here. It's not going to be a constant flow of joy. However, we know how to kind of go back and forth and be able to be with what the difficult times so that when we're with the difficult times, we get to be with it. And then just like when we're with the difficult, we can also have the space and capacity to be with the joy and the happiness. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It goes hand in hand.
It does. I can listen to you. Oh my gosh, that was so dope and so important. Because
Mm,
we talk about healing and we don't talk about joy, and that's
mhm,
been a game changer for me is
mhm,
inviting joy into my life.
mhm,
Like real, like for me, joy is not about like what I have. It's something I feel like in my spirit,
mhm,
right? And it's
mm,
the area that so many people can't even fathom what that would even begin to look like.
mhm,
Which is why I think people like you and I are on this mission because we
mhm,
know what can be on the other side of
mhm,
this journey that people are starting on.
mhm,
And like you said earlier, because at first I was like, dang, why do I have like this gift of understanding and listening because it feels so heavy.
mm,
And I feel really sad. I'm a very empathetic person. But then I took on this, like, you know what, they have to go through this to get to the other side. I started to think that way.
mm,
And that helped me be able to sit and hold space for people better
mhm,
because
mhm,
the way you started to look at it, I began to reframe it. And that's the only people like, how do you do this? And I was like, I know like there's something waiting on the other side. So I have
That's
faith
beautiful.
in that. And that keeps me going.
Yeah. And we need people that are able to hold space for
Yeah.
the really, really hard stuff because there is so much suffering and we are going through so much and we are within systems that don't make sense for
Yeah.
us, for
Yeah.
people like us, for
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
It's really difficult that and sadly we as a species we've reached a point where people have really forgotten like where
Yes.
we come from, why we're here. We have so much power in our hands and there's just a lot of confusion. So I'm out
Yeah.
here like we're clearing hopefully the path
Yeah.
and helping people remember that we
Yeah.
do have so much power within all of the systems of oppression and just everything that we encounter as human
Yeah,
beings.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's good.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, you started your somatic arts and therapy and Reiki. Tell
Mhm.
people what Reiki is.
Sure.
I had a little miniature experience and it was like amazing, but I
Yeah.
have clients that talk about it all the time, but I've
Mhm.
never had a real full session. So
Oh, okay, well, we'll
I
have to
would love
change
to
that.
hear,
Yes,
yeah,
you'll
I
have
would
to
love to
come
hear
through.
what that is. And but I've only
Yeah,
heard amazing things. I've learned so
yeah.
much talking to people, but I've only heard
Mhm.
amazing things about Reiki.
Yeah. So Reiki was the first thing when I got back, from Thailand. It was the first thing once I was, out of college that the first modality that I really connected with after this experience in Thailand. And it's an Asian technique. It's a Japanese tradition, passed down from many, many years ago. And there and now it's so much more popular than it was when I first,
Oh yeah.
started practicing. And it is an art that a healing art that is very soothing and very calming, and it's it's an energy exchange between the person holding space and the person receiving. Um, the the person who Dr. Sui, who created this or who had this idea, and sort of put it in a way that we could learn it, understood the ability that we have as humans to nurture one another and
Yeah.
to really just love up on each other through the power of our hands.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's just so much that goes within that, and but to keep it short, um, the training isn't it's a very, like, short training, and it's a process that once you're attuned to it, as they say, you build on it, and you
Mhm.
start to work more and understand the energy more. And
Mhm.
the whole idea is that you're working with energy, with life source energy,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
it's what's all around us, it's what we
Yeah.
breathe, it's just life force. And it is very much for me about integrity and really being connected, grounded with myself. And so understanding there's always consent if the person wants touch. If they do not, great. You could also do it from afar, like with your hands slightly above the body in the different areas that you move through. And I've never had that experience. Every person that I've worked with in my 10 years has always wanted the connection with my
Yeah.
hands. So the person is fully clothed, and they lay down like on a massage table. And yeah, we really talk about the intention of the person for wanting to be there, because usually typically someone who is receiving Reiki or even seeking it is looking for a shift in their life, or needing some sort of like a little, just a little love, a little
Yeah.
nudge. And it's a way to sort of recalibrate. So it starts at the head, and the whole idea is that we move through basically all the energy centers of the body. And in doing so, everything sort of goes back to homeostasis. There's a sense of relaxation. A lot of people will fall asleep. It's very soothing. People that are going through very vigorous treatments for different things, different diseases and things like that, will receive Reiki. There's Reiki in hospitals to
Mhm.
support people in transition and as they're receiving treatment. But it can also be, there are clients that I see on a weekly basis that are just they're about this life, and they receive so much from it. And they love how they feel once they've been held by someone, because that's really what it is.
Mhm.
It's supporting someone and holding them in
Yeah.
a physical way. And so it's very warm, it's very soothing, it's very relaxing.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
yeah, yeah.
And I think you're talking about energy. I don't think
Mhm,
people realize how much energy is transferable. Like this is a good thing
mhm,
with
mhm,
Reiki, but since you mentioned energy, I just want people to know like energy is real. And a lot of
mhm,
times people are in certain spaces and they feel something, but they're not used to trusting their bodies or being in tune with what they need. They don't realize like sometimes like it's the energy and it's okay, and you can like you
mhm,
have the power to step away,
mhm.
but that's something that I think is important for people to understand too.
Yeah, and work with people if you're seeking that, work with someone that feels good to be in their presence, right? Because
Yes.
it's an energy exchange, and just as much as the person on the table receives, we are also. And so it's literally a transference, and we're supporting one another. And so it's important to feel safe with the
Yeah.
person, and to feel yeah, comfortable
Yeah.
and at ease and in
Yeah.
their presence for sure. Mhm.
And then so you started with Reiki. Did you move into
Mm.
yoga next?
I did,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, you got it. Look at you did your homework. I did. I was like, "All right, so energy work and then the physical body," that's I started moving through there. So there's a spa in Boston called Exhale, and they had a location on Arlington Street, like, right by Newbury Street, and, I started working there out of college and soon, like, moved up in the company and was one of the 5 women to run this space, this particular location, and part of our job as a I was the manager of guest experience, I had to be involved in everything. So I've received all the treatments, I did all the classes because they have, bar and yoga, and could you believe that before my experience in Thailand, I really didn't even know about yoga. I didn't even I don't understand how I lived an entire a whole, like, decades of my life or,
Yeah.
at that point and didn't know about these practices. So, it's just incredible. Yeah, and, so I
You
started
sound like me. That's what I feel like where I'm like, "Dang, I can't believe it took me this long to learn certain
right?
things."
I
It's
have a
like
I have friends that are older than me, and I cherish them so much in my life because every time I say a comment like that, that just comes genuinely, right?
yeah,
Like, as
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah.
processing, and they'll be like, "Girl, thank God you started when you did." I have a friend who started at 50,
Right,
and
right,
she
right.
now teaches and, almost, what,
Oh, that's
15 years
dope.
later, and
Yeah.
lived a very just yeah,
Different life,
different
yeah.
lifestyle, and so she's like, "You found it, thank God that you found it
I
when you did, because
know.
so many people will find it way later in life," and,
Yeah.
but there's always that part of us or of me that I'm just like, "Damn, I would have been such a different
Yeah.
person,"
I know.
and just, I would have had such a, amazing tool during the hardest time of a person's life, like
Yeah,
teenage years,
yeah.
OMG. There I go again, OMG. I just yeah. I would have been it would just would have been a whole different world, but I trust God's timing and,
Yes.
everything obviously I had to go through that
Amen.
really dark time in my teenage years, and here we are. So once I really felt what that was like in my body, to be in my body and to not be distracted and to move with my breath and start to learn about proprioception and interoception and just, like, all these words and things and concepts, I was like, it was a whole new again, a whole new world, and I was like,
Yeah.
"This is everything that I've been looking for in my life."
Wow, that's so amazing. And it sounds like similar to like my yoga experience.
Okay.
And you did the Reiki, you did the yoga, and
Mhm,
now you have like all of these things that you're realizing are medicines, right? When I talk about
mhm,
what when I give people options, today I spoke to somebody about acceptance and grief. They talked about a situation, and I said, what the medicine you probably need is, we only look at medicine in traditional of a pill
mhm.
form, but there's other medicines that we need,
Absolutely.
right? For people listening, because it's all Reiki, yoga, somatic work,
Meditation, yeah,
could
breath
sound
work.
like really like, whoa, where do I start?
Mm.
I know your social media page, you have like a little small like stuff people can do. You give
Yeah,
suggestions.
I
But what
do.
would you say is a good start for someone that's trying to get into, because I just will also want to say that if you've gone through trauma, I
Mhm,
don't want to just make it sound super beautiful, because sometimes it's hard, even going to the gym and pausing. When your system is so used to being on go and you're trying
mhm,
to slow it down, your system is nervous. There's some people like they're working on themselves, sleep, they jump in their sleep because their body's not used to
mhm,
being at rest. So
mhm,
I do want to preface that for people that
mhm.
may have had a really hard life and want to start this journey, that it may feel hard initially.
Absolutely.
But, like, what kind of tips or things you would say to somebody
Yeah.
that for
So,
you?
definitely and thank you for taking it there because like I said earlier, my process from the moment that I was in Thailand to now and just in learning all of these different modalities, it was very difficult. So they were all there as tools for me. And I was also in therapy. I was also
Right.
getting professional support as well in acupuncture and so many different things that really helped me and held me during that time and building community for sure.
Mhm.
So it's super important to remember that again, we have it is a practice, right? And healing is not linear.
Mhm.
And there seems to be this idea that, and you mentioned this earlier, that like doing more is more, and sometimes
Doing nothing is
less is actually more. And
yeah.
seeking support from someone that you trust,
Yeah.
you know, um, it might mean that for a while you actually have someone to guide you through these processes or through some of these like different practices.
Mhm.
Because when we are in a state where we're very dysregulated and our nervous systems are on edge and where there's little trust with just the outside world in general, working one-on-one with someone is a really great first step, because
Mhm.
then at least you can start to understand the way your body is presenting, the way that it moves, the way that it feels to breathe deeply. Like I will say, and if you've come to one of my classes, I teach a restorative class that is literally we lay on props on the ground. That's what we're doing the entire time.
Wow.
And this is such big work. And at the time that I got certified, back in I started in 2012. This was not the cool thing. This was like, what do you mean? If you teach yoga, you're supposed to be on your head, you're supposed to do all these crazy things. And yes, I was all up in that stuff too at the time. But my whole practice led me to be able to do what I do right now, which is literally to help people just arrive and
Yeah.
to just be. It's
Yes.
really taking it back to the basics. And the basics can seem so far away you don't if you haven't connected yet with a teacher that can show you that.
Yeah.
and and I'm not saying it in a way where I'm literally meaning that it can show you how simple it is, even though it might not be easy,
Yeah.
but it is
Yeah.
simple. And a lot of this work and some of the people in this community, in the somatic world, in the healing art space, will say that some of this is like actually kind of like boring to people, which to me it's never been boring, because there's so much that I'm always like with and feeling, and I need that time. Like I don't know what my life would be like without those spaces of
Yeah.
quiet and rest.
Yeah.
It can feel daunting to some. So my suggestion is maybe go to a class with a teacher that you trust. Again,
Mhm.
that trust and the feeling safe is key. Because otherwise, if you're in a space where, like, I know for some people, I strength train a lot, and the idea of me going to a gym with like all these people
And energies.
and yeah, and I was gonna say men, and just like the way that I show up in the world, I wouldn't it would be too much for me to even like be in my body to do the workout because
Yeah.
of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I want to be in like my own safe bubble
Yeah.
container. So what do I do? Ever since the pandemic, I strength train at home, and I've set up
Yeah.
my whole space for that.
Yeah.
But all that to say that if the space you go into to do this practice that's supposed to feel, or workout or
Yeah.
whatever, that's supposed to feel calming and rejuvenating, doesn't feel that way when you step into the space, that's not your space.
Yeah. And that's
Where
okay.
and it's okay. It
Yeah.
might be a different kind of space. I went to a dance class the other day, and the whole time I was like, I wish the lights were a little bit dimmer, because when when we work with energy, people that work with energy and that are in the space, the healing arts, where there's so many factors to helping people really feel calm,
Mhm.
that we're just attuned to, because this is the work that we do. And
Yeah.
so in my spaces, the lights are very dim. The
Yeah.
music is really slow.
Yeah.
It's very soothing. It's almost like the feeling of when it's like a really cold day and you're just sipping on a really yummy
That
cup of
tea,
tea.
that
You know what I
cocoa.
mean? It's not like, oh my gosh, I can feel myself just getting more and more at ease in a space like this. And so we need more of that. We need to nurture ourselves a little bit more. And all that to say is that the space is important. The people that you're around is super important. And we got to take it back to the basics. It might be that you listen to a meditation. And I sent you, we're going to, I think, link it to
Yeah.
this episode, where you can, from the comfort of your home, you can
Yeah.
lay down. You don't have
Yeah.
to be in an awkward position to meditate. And what does that even mean? What am I
Yeah.
supposed to quiet my, stop my mind from? No, it's actually not
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
It's literally being with whatever is here now.
Yeah.
Again, that can feel really difficult at
Yeah.
times, especially if we're in a heightened state that we've been in for years and
Yeah.
years, maybe decades.
Yeah.
So, if depending on where you're at, knowing that one-on-one support can be the way to start, and then once you have more tools, you're then maybe able to go to a group class
Hmm.
and come into a space that is a little bit starting slower, right? You're not like gonna be jumping on your, whatever. And then you slowly start to implement these things into
Yeah.
your life. Maybe it's a few minutes a day that you're just like, "Oh, let me see what it's like to not be staring at anything and just like look outside for a bit. What is it like to just like look at my ceiling and actually be with like a little bit of boredom? What does that feel like for me? What about it is interesting? What's difficult? Do you like to write? Journaling, writing. I write a lot on my phone now because of just my life and being so full and being a toddler mom. It's There's many ways to be able to be with what is present for us, and it really just it's a process of noticing where we're at, noticing what's present, and knowing that we do have support if we need it and that we can reach out. And even if, let's say, there's financial circumstances or things that are in the way, reach out to someone, reach out to the person, even though you think that you may not be able to, whatever. The first class at my studio is free. Come to a class. Come to
Yeah.
a class. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
reach out to the person and say, hey, I'm going through this. Is there any way that we can figure
Yeah.
out
You got to
something?
ask. Yeah.
Yeah, we got it, because by showing up, it will show up for you, right? But we got to be open to receiving, and
Yeah.
asking you shall receive, right? We know that. And I think the primarily like what we need to connect with is the desire and to just actually do it. The taking action part is the hardest part. My favorite teacher on the Peloton app, you don't need any equipment to to be on there. Her name is Jess Sims, and I have so much in common with this woman, and she is incredible. And she will always say that the hardest part of
Showing,
any workout, any kind of big commitment or anything like working out,
showing
moving
up.
our body is literally showing up. That is
Yeah.
the hardest
Showing
part.
up. Yeah.
And she'll always say the hardest part is check done. And it
Yes.
really truly is, because
Yeah.
it's the whole idea of like making the space for it. The putting the clothes on, the blocking out the time, and whether you have kids at home or not, and just being like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna show up for myself today. That's huge. That's huge, and it means a lot. And that little tiny steps eventually add up to a lot.
Yeradmi, that was so beautiful.
Look at you
Uh,
going like,
you
oh,
know what? What
yeah.
I love about the way you just kind of went took us on this journey is that it's available to us all, right? Because we do
Mhm,
understand like there's so many financial barriers. And I
mhm.
created this podcast, like I have different like free
Amazing.
offerings because I wanted people to know that, because I had the privilege of always having a job and insurance and
Mhm,
being able to afford to work on my mental health. And I
mhm.
know that's not the case for a lot of people.
Right.
And so I never want people to think it's not available to them. And you said, the meditation just lay. And I literally, when I couldn't afford the gym, I went on YouTube. I started yoga
Mhm.
on YouTube actually
Amazing.
in my home because I couldn't afford it. And
Mhm,
I've always had that mentality of like, I know I can't do this, but what can I do? And it's important for us to not get stuck in the barriers. And
mhm,
really, like, I think if our mind isn't stuck in the barriers, but we start, like you said, the universe shows up. I think if we start to reframe it and be like, okay, this isn't going to work, but what can I do? We'll start to
mhm.
see the possibilities. It's hard to see the possibilities if you're not reframing your mind in that way. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that I will it's a very like an just an aha for myself earlier on, is that I'm not gonna want to do this all the time.
Nope.
And
Yeah.
and we'll be on a high and be like, "Oh, Imma do this," especially around the New Year, and be like, "Imma do this and that." I just saw like a this one of these funny people on Instagram showing like a video, a reel about how the new year started and now how she is now, and it's like the total opposite.
Yeah.
Motivation is kind of like a scam, and it
Yes.
really isn't about that, because 9
Discipline.
out of 10 times we're not gonna be motivated to be
Not.
with the hard stuff or to
Yep.
do a really hard workout. Like
Yep.
it's the thing with the brain, that it's something that is it's such a powerful part of who we are, and it is a part of us that we can actually change. And
Yes.
there's science behind it. It
Yes.
has worked in my life because I am not the same person I was
I'm not.
10
Yeah.
years ago, 5 years ago even. And it's this process of literally building the smallest habits of like, I'm just going to put the shoes on, or I'm just
Yeah.
going to put the pants on, or whatever
Yeah.
it requires, or set the timer, or put on the app, or
Yeah.
whatever I'm listening to, even a song to dance it out, whatever that is. And
Yes.
it could be the 5 minutes. And
Yes.
the motivation is almost always non existent. But there is a why behind it. Like, why? What is it? Why am I showing up to this? Why do I want this change?
Yes.
Why do I want to do the thing when we're in that state of like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that and I'm
Yeah.
gonna do that?
Yeah.
Figure out what is your why in those moments,
Yes. Oh,
right? And then and keep showing up for that even when you don't want to,
yeah.
because that's gonna be the shift.
Mhm.
We're not gonna ever really want to because it's never really the right time.
No, no, you're so right.
We could be doing a million other things. I will say in my classes all the time, we could literally, and just for everyone listening too, we could literally be anywhere in the world right now doing a gazillion different things,
Yeah.
and we've chosen to consciously be here right now.
Yeah,
Why?
that's dope.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
No, I love it. My why, and I do 3 mornings in the gym, intentionally.
Mhm.
I start my day with me.
That's
That's
awesome.
important for me. At 5 a.m. And I
Oh,
tell
so
people I
good.
never want to
You
get
never
up.
wanna go,
I say,
especially
I
in the
promise
winter.
you. Yeah, especially in the winter. My
Nice and
husband's asleep, the
cozy.
kids
Oh
are
my
asleep.
gosh, everyone's
And
warm.
but what happens is I think about my why. Like I know that it
Yes.
helps set the tone for my day. I know that it
Yes.
helps me with clarity. It rejuvenates me. So as I'm getting up and like,
Ugh,
oh my
wow.
gosh, my
That's
why
right.
is what's been circling in my mind. And if you have
Absolutely.
to give yourself a reminder with a sticky note somewhere so that you can constantly see it, that's and you're so right. Like we can really work on recalibrating our mind.
Mhm.
They don't tell us this, but it's true.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you work on, and it's the most underutilized part of our body, but the most
Mhm.
powerful part,
Mhm.
I find it so interesting how it's so underutilized. But once we see our power, like not giving up on yourself and just
Yeah,
kind of taking it one day at a time.
absolutely. And let me ask you this, have you ever regretted a workout or a
I've never
5 AM
regretted
workout?
it. I know. No,
Never.
I never regret it.
Never. Not
It
once.
definitely feels, and then when I don't do it, right, let's just so we're clear, there's moments where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get this extra sleep. So I
Mhm.
take that instant gratification, but
Yeah.
then at the end, I'm like, dang, I wish I had have done it, right? But then I like let it go. I don't
Yeah,
ruminate
right.
on it because we're
Amazing.
human. Like
Mhm.
as we're talking about our journey, know that we don't always do the things that are
Right,
gonna
we're
help
not
us because we
perfect.
can't be healing 24/7.
Mhm.
But I think, what I've been able to do is, like, shift and reset because a lot of times people beat themselves up, and,
Mhm.
I don't do that. I give myself a lot of grace,
Mhm.
and I also work on resetting, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be about a new day. Some people are like, "I'm gonna wait till Monday." It'll be like Tuesday, be like, "I can't wait
Anytime.
till the end of the week," and I'd be like,
Mhm.
"What's wrong with Wednesday? Like, why are we waiting until Friday? That doesn't make," and they
Okay.
start laughing. They be like, "Dang, you're right." Like, that's what I'm trying to say. It's something as simple, but
Literally.
it sounds so foreign. Like, you're right. Why am I waiting till
Yeah.
Friday?
I talk about that all the time. You can begin again at any moment,
At
right? It's
any
any
moment,
moment that we decide.
yeah.
And one thing that I also want to highlight is that by showing up for these really difficult, like 5 AM workouts, where that means you have to be up probably around 4 in the
Yeah,
morning,
yeah.
which means that the night before you're already
Going
preparing yourself,
to
and
yep,
the way that you set yourself up. Okay, so the
yep,
habits are already going
yes,
trickling down, right?
yes,
And all of this work to show up and to actually get it done,
yeah.
it's building so much resilience within
Oh,
us,
yeah.
and to do the hard things and to build the capacity to actually hold very stressful moments, because
Yeah,
life will continuously be
yeah,
stressful. And if we're not building it within like our bodies through movement, because
yeah.
I don't think there's anything more powerful than
The
movement to
movement, yeah,
build the capacity to be with stress and to be
yeah,
with triggers and to be with
yeah.
the hard,
You're
really hard
right.
parts about life. When
Yeah,
we show up in these times when it's not easy and when we don't want to,
yeah,
guess what? Then we're completely in a completely different space
yeah,
to meet the difficulties
yeah,
because we've already trained for it. We're training for
yeah,
it on a constant basis, right?
yeah,
So it
yeah.
goes hand in hand. I keep doing that because I talk with my hands with the
It's
mic.
okay.
But it
You're
goes
right.
hand in hand.
And I think about even when we're physically sick, and I notice like when I get up and start moving, I start to feel better. So I force myself to move a little bit. When we're like the pandemic, I know a lot of people got stuck and like
Mhm.
not really moving. And I remember telling people the three things, regardless of what's going on, is like our sleep, our what
Mhm.
we feed our body, and and the
Mhm.
movement. And I don't
Yes.
say gym because I know it's like I think there's this unfortunate like thing about weight in the gym where
Mm.
it makes it like this thing of you have to be a certain size or do it a
Mm.
certain way. And
Mhm.
I always say movement, even if you're getting out your house, walking up and
Mhm.
down the street, like, because
Mhm.
that's the thing. We don't make it very simple. We don't see
That's a
commercials that
mhm.
say, like, oh, are you struggling? Have you moved your body? There may be gym commercials that's offering you a plan that you can't afford, but
'Cause
there's nothing
capitalism.
about, yeah, there's nothing about moving your body. What are you eating? Are you sleeping? Who's going to get paid from that commercial? So,
Exactly. Are
yeah.
you getting
So,
sunlight?
are
There's
you
so many
getting
ways.
sunlight? Yeah. So I want to provide people with information that's accessible for them,
Yeah,
regardless of their socioeconomic status. And the way
I hear
you
you.
just um, shared your story and the importance
Mm.
of movement, I think is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm really glad. I'm really glad.
Yay.
We're definitely gonna do this again, I feel like,
Yeah.
at
Did
some
you,
point.
was I okay with you?
Oh, this is great. I'm like, how much more time we got?
I know. I was like, I
I
could
feel like we're
definitely
just
talk to
getting
you all day.
started.
I know,
Yeah, I'm
like
like, so
we're
there's so
definitely
much more
gonna
to talk
have you
about.
on again. But can you tell
Yeah.
people where they can
Mhm.
reach you if they want to work with
Of
you and
course.
where your offerings
Yeah.
are?
Yeah. So, everything is on my site, yeradmi.com. So that's yeradmi.com. And I am on the gram. I am on the Facebook, the Book of Faces. I
The old
am
people are. That's the old
okay.
people.
Yeah, I'm there. I know it's such an awkward place right now, but it's like they're there. So I'm trying to help all the people I can. So just showing up out here. I'm on Insight Timer. It's an amazing meditation app. It's free and I have recordings on
Oh,
there.
okay.
There's so many great teachers on that app. I started back when they started, and I have a few coming up actually. I also lead retreats. There's going to be one last one that I'm holding in the Caribbean, and it's going to be later this year. So details will be coming out to that. And
Um,
like I said, if that's something that you would love to be a part of, and for whatever reason you feel like you aren't able to, just reach out and with everything that I shared. And then I teach on a weekly basis at Soma Yoga in Boston in the North End. And your first class is free, and it's on Sundays, 5:45. I usually will tell people 5:30 so that they can get there on time. If you're driving in, it's
yeah.
$3 for parking. We validate
Oh
it at
wow.
Haymarket Garage, and it's right off of the Haymarket station. So we're
Oh
we're really
wow.
accessible, and I would love to have you. You don't need any experience. You can be however you want to be. Wear comfortable clothing, and then I see private clients there. I work with families as a doula, and I am here. Yeah, I'm a resource, and I'm here to support you. So I look forward to meeting some of your audience. That would be amazing.
Aw, thank you
Yeah,
so much. This was
yeah.
so amazing. I'm grateful to
Thank
you
you.
and everything that you do. I felt
Mm,
like so many moments in my spirit of warmth of
mm,
as you were talking, because I
yeah.
relate so much to what you were saying, and
Mhm,
just always like meeting people that are working on helping healing the community is always like
mhm.
a really dope experience for me. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. This was amazing. I can't